I had $20,000 left to my name. I was on the verge of divorce, and I was failing in my business as a financial advisor. It was the most isolating time of my life. Ultimately, when it comes to money, I want people to know that they're not alone. Women specifically, it is the most isolating conversation next to sex probably, but I would even say money is probably more isolating because we can talk about sex as women together in a room. Money is a lot harder. So I want to help bridge that gap tonight and to the best of my ability. And do you want to share why we're here together?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that. So we have been in the same circles for quite a while. And for one reason or the other, like, oh, let's go have coffee, kind of like what you and I were talking about. Let's go have coffee, let's talk, let's connect, whatever. And it wasn't happening. And then we saw each other at an event where we both spoke. And we finally went to coffee. And after what I'm going to tell you in a minute, we were like, this was serendipitous. So last year, I had an amazing year in my business, multiple six figures. And when that year was over and this year started, I found myself in the same place that I was when my business was not making multiple six figures. Same fears, same insecurities, same place. And I was like, what the fuck? And I put this number in the wall.
What was the number?
$1 million. And the more I looked at the number, the farther I got. The more I looked at the number, less fulfilled I felt. The more I looked at the number, less motivation I had. So we sit down for coffee. It's giving me the chills. And like we didn't know what to expect, right? Because we were kind of, you're dating. It's like this coffee, what I tell my clients, go on coffee chats, talk to people. But we also have a lot of friends in common that are close friends. Where the fuck is Casey?
Casey.
Where is she? Where is she? She should be here. And we kind of jumped right into it. And I told her that I had this epiphany at some moment. And I came to my house and I literally took the number off the wall. And my clients can tell you I share this story all the time because while I believe that we all can make that kind of money, what we talked about was we were chasing the carrot. And she shared with me a very similar story with the same number. And we both kind of like looked at each other and were like, we're going through this journey, right? And so many of us were looking at these numbers as this definition of success. But the number has nothing truly to do with the success or the impact that we want to create in the world. What success means to you, to me, to you, is completely different. And the more we dug into it, we were like, we have to have this conversation. We have to let other people know that it's okay to have your own definition of success. And that's how this idea of sharing this conversation began.
I want to start the conversation out talking about our journey to business ownership. For me, it was a get out of my life conversation, and I can't afford to be doing what I'm doing anymore. We're going to talk a lot about pain tonight. And part of my sharing my pain is so that women know that it's okay.
We all feel it though.
Yeah.
And I think the more we open these conversations, it makes it normal that doing business is not at all Instagrammable and all pretty and photos. Like, guys, doing business kind of sucks sometimes.
Sometimes. Sometimes. Doing business, I've been in business now for 8 years, and I have every step along the way had weeks, more weeks than no weeks, where I'm having to pep talk myself to get out of bed and make it happen. It is the ultimate mindset game. It is the ultimate mindset game. And the problem I have with social media, and the reason I started this podcast, is that I'm calling bullshit on an industry of people who make it look so easy. And that has not been my reality.
So for me, one of the biggest things, and I'm so against it, and I've been talking about this almost since day one, is like, it's not about posting on social media. And I want to say this, I teach social media, I believe in social media. It's the glue. It's the glue that brings everything else together. It's an amplifier. But like, if we can start having more real conversations in social media, like right now, I'm really hot with the whole scale to 7 figures, but you don't really know what's happening behind these people's businesses, these people's lives. And like, they make it look like it's so easy, but they never showing you how they got there.
Yeah, agreed. And I've had uber successful people on my podcast, and the first thing I tell them is, if you're going to be on my podcast, you need to be willing to share the shit.
Yes.
Because I don't want to have a bullshit conversation about all the rosy stuff about business. I want to know legitimately what it's taken you to get here. And the majority of the people that I've had these conversations with, one of them was Tony Robbins' former CFO, is that they've all lost it all.
Wow.
At least once, lost it all. One of my, Josh Cadillac, who's super successful in real estate, multi-million dollar business, lost his family home in the business, in the crash. He said, Lisa, I was almost homeless. I lost my family's entire dynasty. But on social media, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't see that. And I think that it's really important for me, as a conversation when it comes to money, to say, no, this is the real pain that people go through. And also, this is why CEO suicide rate is at the highest level we've ever seen before.
I love that. So for me, one of the biggest things is I was a bartender. I don't know if you guys knew that. And when I left the industry, I was a very well-known bartender. I was making multiple 6 figures here on the Strip. When I decided to quit my job, I had this veil that I was going to leave, and immediately I was going to replace my income. And of course, I can flip glass bottles, and I can spit fire, and I can do whatever. And then, like, literally 3 months later, I was in my office. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Yeah. And it was the solitude. It was also, now I know years later, somatically, right, on the body, I literally had feelings. I used to feel like I was spiraling down, right? Like, I did a lot of inner work and mindset work and energy work at this point, but I don't have that anymore. But like, it was brutal. And I remember thinking, what did I do? And when I started coaching, the reason why I started coaching is because what I realized is people were going on Instagram and telling all these stories, but when I was meeting them in person, they were different people. Yeah. The things didn't align. Yeah. But the people that I was meeting, there was a need for people to tell their real stories and to build businesses from who they were. Yep. Like, if you're living corporate to have a more real life because what we're doing is not working, are you going to go put this all shiny armor and create a whole new lie over here? Yeah. And that's what I saw, and that's where my passion lies.
Okay, so let's talk about the dark side of doing business. I want to lean into that. How have you been able to navigate? So somatic therapy. Yeah. I've also done a lot of somatic therapy. We were talking about this, which we can wrap back around to as well. I've personally invested $500,000 into my business.
Earlier today, we were talking about like kind of where we're in business and like what we invested on. So very, very, very early on my business, I actually invested on a branding coach. That was even before I did mindset or whatever. And one of the reasons why then I was so pulled to go into personal branding is because I remember this was so shallow, and it was like, feeling here, create your mission. And I was like, but I don't know. I don't know what I want. And I realized that it was on the self-discovery, truly looking inward and bringing that out. So in my journey, first was mindset, but then when I remember I was watching who then eventually was my coach. She was speaking on stage, and she was talking about like do you ever get out of your head? And like, what do you feel? And I remember thinking, what is she talking about?
What? Feeling what?
What? Like, from here to here, I don't feel shit. And I remember I put two and two together, the spiraling feeling with, that it's in my body, it's not here. And that's when I started realizing that every time that I wanted to do something that was out of my comfort zone, I kind of started putting two and two together. And at the time, this was like COVID, after COVID, I was doing therapy and it wasn't enough. And that's when my journey with like energy healing and somatic therapy, subconscious reprogramming, and what I saw with the people that I was working is I could give them all this strategy, but they would never go implemented if they were having the same shit that I was going through. And that was very clear to me. If we don't work on what you're feeling when you are doing all of the things. So now I teach, and a lot of my people can tell you, I teach a lot of strategy, but we dive super deep on like, hey, what are you feeling when you're actually doing these things?
The feeling part of it, I think, is a huge opportunity and also a miss when it comes to building businesses. We get into strategy. I know the first thing that I did out of the gate was hire a coach. Tell me what to do. I don't know what I'm doing. Tell me what to do. I paid great money to hire her. I had $20,000 left to my name. I was on the verge of divorce, and I was failing in my business as a financial advisor. It was the most isolating time of my life.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Because you just also hit on the nail. You were a financial advisor.
Yeah.
Now you were, because I see this happen so much with people, where you're having that imposter syndrome that you...
Totally.
If there is a duality, right? One is how good you are at what you do, but now you have a business to run, which are not the same thing.
It all goes with redefining success and what success really means and what success really looks like. So on the outside looking in, I needed to have my shit together, which is why I wrote my book, Girl, Get Your Shit Together, because I would go to networking events and I'd have to have my shit together, right? Be perfect. Be perfect. Wear the right thing. Say the right thing. Inside, I was terrified and I was in a downward spiral, but I had to put the face on and meet people and do what I could to attract business. How many of you can relate? And how many of you have been there? And on the inside, I'm freaking the fuck out.
I was there.
Freaking the fuck out. I don't know where my next client's going to come from. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this business partnership that is toxic for me. I'm struggling and I'm not talking to anyone. And then I'm going to look for help. And it looks like everybody else has their shit together but me.
Okay. You and I talked about that too. There is so many layers, guys. We sat in that cafe for like 3 hours, by the way. So you are here for like a while. But this is true. Like I feel, and I don't know if this is a Vegas thing. And if it is a Vegas thing, it's our job to change that. Now, I'm not saying you need to go out there and tell everybody how much you're making or how much you're not making. But the truth of asking for help or being of help, of our service, without meaning, like, it seems like everybody has their shit together but you, when in reality,
no one does. No one does.
Together. And I think that when you learn that, you're like, oh, it's so liberating.
That was a huge lesson for me. And it was through the process of my show, because I'm like, listen, surely not everybody has this figured out. And the more conversations I had, the more coffee dates I had, the more podcasts I was on, I was like, oh, no one has this figured out. No one has this figured out. I was just watching a clip of Grant Cardone talking about in 2008, he had $1 billion in debt.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you know who Grant Cardone is, but he's a tycoon in the real estate industry. So it was leveraged and also secured. So it was on properties. And the bank started calling him. And the money coach in me was like, how much a month? If you have $1 billion in debt, what is your payment every single month for that debt? And then I got really nosy because that's who I am. And that's exactly why we're here, is being like, what the fuck is going on with everybody else's debt right now? Okay, so then I started to look at the top 10 S&P companies right now are carrying more debt than they've ever carried. From 2020, you look at their trends and it's all the way up.
So real mean, because I'm probably going to go in a limb here, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
Tell me the name of the guy, because
Kiyosaki.
He literally, right now, numbers, he's like broke. He's not, it's still real estate and all that, but like because of how things are going. And the conversation my husband and I were having is, he's probably not thinking I'm broke. He's probably thinking, because of how the risk tolerance is built, which goes back to how we kind of started, right? How much we invested in our business. And for me, this is a very important conversation because I see so much fear into, and I'm looking at Julie, and Julie is the less fearful person to invest. So this does not apply to you. But like, I feel like sometimes like people have so much fear to invest in their business, and like, and this was me too, just so you know. Like my first, not the branding coach, but like my first real investment was $16,000. And after I paid, I almost puke.
Mm-hmm. Me too. I had to pull over. I said yes to the coach. I was driving. I pulled over and I thought I was going to lose it.
But one thing I know, and I would love for you to, if anybody here can also share if they have experience like this, I truly felt that the transformation happened in that moment. I was another person the moment I said yes to that. Because the next day, when I had to show up to that call, girl, I was the first one on that fucking Zoom, I'm gonna tell you. And because I had to become the person that had to justify the $16,000 that I just paid. And I didn't tell my husband.
Wow. Who can relate to that?
You didn't either? So I didn't tell my husband, and about 2 months later, he knew I was doing something. And 2 months later, when it actually started working, I sat him down and I was like, listen, I did something. I don't feel proud of this, but it's working, and I will never not tell you again. But I put $16,000 in a credit card, and it's amazing. It's working. And he got really, really mad. And then he told me, you know what? If you believe it's gonna work, I believe it's gonna work. But I know that like that's just my relationship, but like the fear was like literally in my feet, in my legs, just to spend that money.
Yeah, and going back to the darker side of business, these are the risks and these are the feelings that are so important for people to hear that they're not alone. And so that right there is gold. I did it. It was scary. I wanted to throw up. I hid it from my husband, but you better believe that I showed up and I got shit done.
Can we talk about something? And this is like more like asking your opinion, because this is one that I understand how it works, but I see it over and over. The women that do spend the money and they end up not showing up. So from your perspective, like the money coach, NLP, what is happening there? Because if this is you, you don't have to say it, but I see it. Do you see that? People that invest the money and they don't show up or they don't do the work. What is happening?
So there's two things going on, to simplify it. One is they were sold and they were in, and then they made the decision. And then every limiting decision and belief and reason for why they cannot be successful showed up at their front door. So they jumped in, and whoever sold them, I've been on that side of the sales conversation. I'm sure you've been on that side of the sales conversation. We're doing our job. What are your dreams?
Yeah.
What do you want? Let's connect this investment to you getting what it is that you want.
Well, and we see the potential in that person.
All of it. They pay. They're in, and then all of a sudden, it's total sabotage. It's total sabotage. And once they get into that place, if they stop showing up, there is nothing you can do as a coach to get them back because that is their journey. Yeah. And it's sabotage of the way it works in our brain, is that we have all of these beliefs that happened from a very young age that are in our unconscious mind. And we have all of these limiting beliefs, negative emotions, and limiting beliefs in our unconscious mind. We don't even know they're there.
Oh, I did not know in 2019 I had them, you guys. It was a fucking blind punch on the face.
It is. And that's, for me, that's what I'm calling the dark side, which as I punch myself in the face, and I go, that's what it feels like some days in business, right? We're just like punching ourselves in our own face. I really feel that way. Yeah. Why am I doing that? Okay, so then fear shows up at the door, anger shows up at the door, fighting with your spouse shows up at the door, I'm going to get a divorce shows up at the door, and all of a sudden you don't have the strategies to deal with it. And so investing makes the most sense because you want to get what it is that you want. But if you, one, don't have a coach that necessarily is trained in helping you really walk through that, or you don't have a support system, that's another huge thing for women, is if we don't have someone at home who is supporting us.
But also outside, right? This is why these communities are so important.
So important. My family, when I told them, one, that I was going to be writing a book, and it was going to be a personal story, and it was going to be about money, they were terrified. And they all told me what a horrible idea that was, and why my brother, I have a twin brother, he said, Lisa, why do you feel like you have to tell everybody your life story? Why do you have to do that? We're such a private family. This is not okay. And then I'm going to start a business. In the same year, I started a business, I wrote a book, and I went through a divorce. And it was because I knew that I couldn't afford not to anymore. I had sold myself short for so many years and sold myself out for so many years. The pain was so strong. Yeah. I couldn't do it anymore. And that's what got me $10,000 across the country to my coach, who I just got off the phone with today, who I love. But we have to be willing to show up and not be perfect.
And one of the things, because I actually get asked, people tell me all the time, like, you're so courageous. Like, even like now I've done a lot of things, but I think that like, even when I was bartending, when I left my job, like this was a thing. When I left my job, my circle were like, you're crazy. There were two sides. They were like, you're fucking crazy. Mm-hmm. Go girl. There was nothing in the middle. There was nothing in the middle. And I vividly remember the feeling of me knowing there was a different version of myself, and I felt there was a glass and I couldn't reach through it. And I remember, like, for me, it's still till this day is journaling, and I would journal, like, what the fuck am I thinking? I don't have clarity. And the more I journal, the more I knew myself, and the more I journal, the more I understood what I wanted. And then when I started seeing that my work started touching other people, it was a whole year for me. If you're not familiar with this, when you go home, you can Google ego death. Literally, it was the death of who I was and the rebirth of who I was becoming. This is real. This is like, and there was not one day that I didn't say, whatever it takes, this is going to happen. Even when I cried, even when I wanted to crawl under the bed sheets. And I remember my husband asking me, like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I am. Why? I don't know.
I don't know, but I have to.
But eventually I knew, though. And I knew also that somebody at some point needs to take the torch. And that's every single one of us, though. I don't believe that her and I were here and you guys go home with our message and it dies there. I think there is going to be some of you that are going to take that torch, and you're going to have your own events. You're going to have your own groups. You're going to have whatever it is, right? So for me, it was actually believing. I always knew it, but I was told, shh, That was like the thing. My mom still does it, by the way. Like, so for me, there was nothing. Like, nobody wanted to hear it, right? But people wanted to hear it.
Well, people needed to. You needed to. But it took you, it literally feels like, in my experience of it, it feels like a snake that is shedding its skin over and over and over again for me as a business owner.
I know that now, though. I didn't know it then.
No, because I thought, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to make all this money. It's going to be amazing. No. Okay. Yes and no.
Yes and no. But I think, though, also, okay, let's go back a little bit to the whole social media thing. The expectation of how long it takes to build a business. The expectation of the cash months and the 10K months and the 20K months and the 6-figure business. Nobody's telling you their debt. Nobody's telling you what they're investing in. Maybe you brought in like 100,000, whatever, but maybe you're like 200,000 in debt or whatever, which I'm not judging. What I'm saying is like, guys, put your bigger panties on and filter through your own like thought leadership, right? Because I talk about income too, and I talk all about those things, but at the end of the day, each of us needs to be our own advocate for what we let in instead of believe what people are. We're scrolling mindlessly and we're looking at those numbers.
Yeah. So 2 things. I want to wrap up with that and then open it up to our audience. The first one is when it comes to the investing side of it, how have you continued to have the courage to make the investments that you've needed to make and navigate the highs and lows of cash flow?
So, okay, for me, it was profit first. So when I read, if you didn't read Profit First, look at like all my people are going like this, because literally people get in the first call with me and they're like, oh, I thought I'm coming to a branding like program. And I'm like, no, you're going to read Profit First. But the reason for that is because I was running my business even before then, and I never pay myself a salary, and you can't stay in business if you don't pay yourself. So that's number one. Number two, I'm not gonna lie, there has been a lot of times that I retreated. Like I invested a lot of money and then I retreated, and then but for me still till this day, the biggest tool I have is kind of getting myself out of the equation. And I look at my business as a separate entity, because even though I'm looking around, 99% of us here, I feel almost everybody's a personal brand, but your business is still separate from you. So yes, for branding, social media, we're a personal brand, we are our business, we're our brand. But when it comes to look at your business separate, and then I always ask myself, okay, what would $500,000 Ati do? What would $1 million Ati do? Okay, and then I start kind of like having this vision, and I'm like, okay, how far can I actually expand before I freak out?
I do the same thing. I do too. Okay, what's my tolerance here?
Yes.
Right, how far am I willing to go?
Yeah. So then, but it's mental. This is a mental and physical exercise. And I can tell you, you can do this exercise with almost anything. Like if you're very overwhelmed, for example, like I see it and I'm like, okay, where's the edge where I can take something, but then the moment I start putting more in that mental plate, I start feeling like a lot. So, and then I sit on that edge, and that's how you start expanding, either from not being overwhelmed or your risk tolerance. I'm going to tell you, my risk tolerance in 2019, even though I spent 16,000, it was a lot smaller than me running this event I'm running next month. Right?
Yeah, will you share that? Because we were having a private conversation at the event we were at Sunday about the event. And that is a big difference, investing $16,000 and then throwing an event that's going to cost you just as much or more, right? One event.
And I think that you have to also not only believe you can make it happen, you have to bet on yourself. And for me, it was like, okay, how can I make this different next year? Do I want to have this risk? Do I not have this risk? Like, where do I stand? But even I shared with her, I had a moment of freak out. Like, what the fuck am I doing? And then I was like, oh, wait, this is fucking awesome. It's going to be awesome. So I've been in that roller coaster, like, just like, guys, like, just the venue is 12K, okay? So it's like when you start thinking about those kind of numbers, you also think of what's the potential for your business and for the impact, right, that you're going to have. Like, this is going to have impact. That's going to have 10 times more impact, right?
Yeah. So some of the lessons I'm hearing from you tonight is, one, bet on yourself. No one else is going to.
Guys, if you do not believe in you, people can tell you they believe in you. They're going to tell you, yeah, you can do it.
But they're not there at 2 o'clock in the morning with you, right? Well, maybe.
Well, 2 in the morning, me walking, like, you want to hear, like, I was walking around my house because I had this nightmare that I lost my voice the night before the event. And I was like, and then I can't go back to sleep. But this is for all of us. How many of you go to bed and you have thoughts about your business? Okay, that's just the reality of being a business owner, a woman business owner, a man business owner. I guarantee you, my husband that has like a secure job, he puts that head on the bed and he's like, why are you still up? Like, and every woman in business that I know, this is a reality.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And my fears happen at like 2:22 every morning. It's amazing how it happens, where it's just like, boop, okay, I'm up. And it's like, and where my battles have been recently is with my husband. So I went through divorce. I got remarried. My new husband is amazing. And still, I wonder, when my brand has steadily grown, and now I'm moving into national media, national arena, all the things that I've been dreaming of since I could remember, like listening to Kelly Clarkson, looking outside of my window, like dreaming about being gone someday. It's all happening.
And do you want to share? This week you had a freak out.
I had a huge freak out this week. It wasn't about my husband. What was I freaking out about? Oh, I'll come back to that. But just to say that the fears what I was afraid of in 2017 or 2018 is not the same thing that I'm afraid of now. But I still have the fears of when I am on national stages, which is happening this year, literally, and I get to go to Detroit and I get to go to different places, is he going to stand by my side? And I won't know until I do it. But that fear is so palpable and so tangible because I won't know until I get on the other side of it. And I think that's the case for all of us.
And we all have different fears and different safety issues, if we want to call it. So you said that, and I'm like, I probably would never have that fear, but I had other ones that they constantly come back, right? Like they're the default. So you having that awareness, what is your default fear? What is your default thing that you go back to that you realize that is that cyclic? For me, if we want to like kind of give it full circle, it didn't matter the amount, the number didn't matter. The fear was always the same. Oh, are people going to pay? Is this money going to go away? Can I repeat it? Can I have the same month? And then I was like, wait a minute. I was having these same thoughts when I was making $1,000 a month or $40,000 a month. And I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. So that fear is also one that I grapple with because I'm a numbers nerd. So I have like spreadsheets and charts for days. So when I have my freakouts, I go back to the numbers and I remind myself that I'm okay. And my freakout this week was that I was doing the numbers before I came today, just recounting it, like how much am I really spending on all of this? And to date, probably $80,000 in marketing for the year. Okay. $80,000 that isn't just laying around. I went through a divorce. I almost lost everything. I have paid and bootstrapped my entire way through my company. I don't use any of our personal money for our business at all.
I don't either.
So what Jimmy makes is Jimmy's. And that is totally separate in my mind, and I keep a very clear line on that. And so I had a freak out because I'm not getting the exact return on investment yet that I was hoping to at this point. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing right now? Like, the insanity started to set in, and the fear started to set in of, am I crazy in thinking that this is possible? And everybody wants my money. And I don't know if that's an at-large conversation about how expensive it really is to build a personal brand, because social media alone at a certain point will not cut it.
No.
And I called Steve, who I work with, shout out to Steve on the show. And I said, Steve, I'm at a crossroads right now. I either need to start making a return and making big money, which is what we've talked about, or I need to cut my expenses, meaning basically I need to give up. I was at that point mentally on Monday or Tuesday. And it was an oh fuck moment. Am I gonna give up? No. But the one thing that I realized is that I went back to the days when I was a financial advisor not asking for help, and I got so stuck in my own way. Like, I should be able to figure this out. I know how to run a business. I know how to attract leads. I know how to do all this stuff, but it's not happening the way I thought it was going to happen. And all he said was, you need to play bigger. And I was like, oh. He said, Lisa, you're at the next level. It's time to start playing at the next level. And I was like,
you were retreating.
Fuck you. And yes, you're right. Because how dare I get to this point and sabotage myself?
At some point this year, I called off the event. You knew that. You didn't know that?
No.
So, similar to what you're sharing, I was like, fuck. I started looking at the numbers, and I started looking at our cash flow, and I was like, I couldn't take it. And I took myself through the exercise that I just shared with you, like the expansion, and I just couldn't take it. And this fear took over. And I told my husband, I'm calling off the event. I'm returning the tickets that are sold. And I actually share, once I was on the other side, I share inside of the academy, because I think that transparency, especially with the people that you coach and work, is so important, because they can see somebody that is a few steps ahead going through it. I literally called the venue, you guys, and I called it off. And then I took the weekend off, and I sat on silence. And I had a meeting with two people that they're my coaches in my program, and they called me off. And they were like, do you truly do not want to do the event? Or do you have fear? And my husband had asked me that question. I said, no, I don't want to do it. I don't have it in me. I don't have
all the stories, right?
I don't have it in me this year. I don't have it in me. Last year, I was so inspired, and I was so excited, and I just don't have it in me this year. And he was like, wow, interesting. And he left it there. Then I had my little women council, and they were, girl, like, it's okay for you to like pivot. It's okay to change your mind. There were two particular people that were like, really? Is it really that you don't want to do it? And they started asking me all these questions about like, but what were you going to do at the event? And then all of a sudden I started getting all excited, and they're like, so you're not excited about it? I was like, fuck. And I started journaling, and I was like, it's the number. Yeah. The number is paralyzing me. I'm scared, and fuck fear, and I'm going to do it. So on Friday, I called the venue and cancel. And on Monday, I called the venue. And I was like, I was just kidding. Something like that. But the reason why I share that is because when you realize that other people go, what you just share gives every single one of us permission to go through that and decide, are we pushing? Because if I didn't push and I canceled it, it could have been so comfy, right? But now I'm like, but the reality is that I do want more. I do want to play bigger. The same than you.
Yeah.
So at the end is, why are you doing it for? Because I had to get really clear why I was doing it for. That was actually the moment that I decided, okay, I'm doing it. Why am I doing it for?
It's always that. It's always that. Because when I circle back around to my why and the bigger vision of women becoming the leaders of the world financially, if we aren't sharing what's really going on and how we're really learning, how is anybody else going to cross the threshold for themselves? Yeah. And we are the leaders and the ones that get to say, hey, this is everything that's going on, but because I'm doing it, so can you. So can you. Yeah. And I think that's the journey, that's the job. So wrapping up to the number, we talked about this a little bit on Instagram today. The $1 million mark for me was this sign or this symbol of this ultimate something. And that if I had $1 million and I made $1 million in my business, that it meant that I was successful and blah, 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 blah. And I was so lost in that number, I never felt like I was enough because I was never hitting the mark. And when I let go of the number and I made my success deeply personal, incredibly personal and specific, and I picture myself, so Jimmy and I want a beach house, a very specific beach house. We know exactly which one we want and where we want to be. And I picture myself at 91 years old. I don't know why 91, but that's the age. And I don't know if he's with me or not, but I have a son, Connor. And I think about that beach house and who I'm with. That's what matters. And it's not just the beach house, because that would be lovely, but the impact and the conversations and the books and the other women. And if I can do it, because I didn't think I was capable of even being here at one point in my life, then that's a life worth living.
Jills. For me, when I took the number off the wall and I made it about the ripple effect. So when I think somebody like Julie, right? Like Julie and I were very aligned in our values, like family and marriage, like without getting into the nitty gritty, I truly believe that that is the nucleus, right? Where everything happens. Like if she has success, other women can have sex. Well, they can have sex too. They can have success. When I look at somebody like Jamie, right? She's helping women in a different moment of life. This is like what your fifth business, right? And she keeps giving and giving and giving. And I always have this vision of me when I was 8 years old. I used to like sing like this in front of the mirror, and then
I believe it.
Yeah, I was like literally I can see it, and then that light kind of dimmed, and I regained that light when I became this version of me. And I know if I can do that for other women, like and my way is in business, but I know that is so personal because none of you are doing what you are doing because you just want to make money. If you wanted to make money, you can be doing anything else. Mm-hmm. That is just the truth. And if I wanted to make money, I could stay flipping bottles at Carnival Court if that was the only thing. Like I had not a care on the world. But is in that ripple effect that we stop. Now you can take the carrot out because what we were talking, right? The carrot constantly moves. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, now I made 10 grand a month. Now I make 15 a month. Now I make 20 a month. When does it stop? Well, it never. It stops the moment you take the number out and you make it about the ripple effect. Now, I want to make something really clear. I'm not saying don't think big, don't play big, don't go after the money. But the money will come when the feelings accompany the excitement of what you're doing.
Yeah. And how much money is entirely personal.
And it's nobody's fucking problem, you guys.
Yeah. Agreed. Thank you so much for watching Real Money. And if you want more of this, please let me know. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Let us know in the comments what you loved about this show, and we'll do more of it for you. Thanks for joining Real Money.